point for today, where we just kind of want to talk through what are the opportunities that y'all see, what are the concerns that you have, what are refinements you might want. We'll work with the consulting team to sort of make updates ahead of the next working group meeting. And then, kind of either for the next meeting or after that, start looking at what would the cost be, if there's revenue or anything else associated with it, kind of understanding kind of how those pieces fit together. So feedback could be the uses themselves, the kind of the design and layout, access concerns, that kind of thing. I've got a couple of updates on some of the kind of smaller bits that we've been working on, but before I get into that, it may be worth kind of going around and doing an introductions real quick. If people just want to say real quick name and affiliation, maybe we'll do community members first. Councilmember, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I am happy to. I didn't know my camera was off. Hi, guys. I am Councilwoman Sherry Weiner. I represent Bellevue's District 22. I like to call it the heart of Bellevue. And this project is right smack dab in the middle of it. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Always good to see you, Councilmember. Glenn, do you want to go next?
Be happy to. Glenn Biggs, I'm the President and CEO of Arts Bellevue, and glad to be with you today.
Great, good to see you. Renee?
Renee Kasman, resident of District 22. Have been for 30 years now.
All right. Seth?
Hi there, Seth Swihart, Principal, Bellevue Middle School.
Great. And then Metro folks, maybe start with the planning team, and then we'll hit the mayor's office and parks.
Hi, I'm Miranda Clements. I'm with Advanced Planning and Research, Greg's team. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Gowdy, the project manager for this project. Also, I saw that Mary and Dean also joined from the community liaison.
Yeah, Mary Ann Dean. I'm a neighbor, Ashley Green, just next door to the project.
Awesome. Great to see you, Mary Ann. All right, Harriet?
I'm Harriet, and I'm with planning, providing project support.
Kendra?
Hey everyone, my name is Kendra Apwitz. I work in Mayor O'Connell's office on sustainability and resilience issues, and then I also oversee another subset of our programs, primarily our transit work and our children and youth work.
All right, and AC?
Unmute myself first. Hi everyone, I'm Anna Christina, or AC, and I'm with Parks.
All right, great to see everybody. And then Aaron, do you want to lead off the consulting team?
Happy to. Hi everyone, Aaron May from Gensler. I'm the project manager from our side. I'll pitch it over to Brian.
Hey y'all, Brian Hubbard, design director, architect with Gensler. I'll pitch it to Fowler.
Hey everyone, Fowler Bolton, designer at Gensler, working on this project.
Then maybe we go over to Edward from Pillars. Edward, you with us?
I am. Excuse the lack of video. I am mobile, but Edward Henley here from Pillars, also joined by Melina. But thanks everyone for serving on the working group. Always great to get to interact with everyone from the community.
And then our civil team.
Yeah, Aaron, this is Jace Jackson. I'm a civil engineer with Reagan Smith.
And I'm Tyler Wages, also with the civil group at Reagan Smith.
All right, I think that rounds it out.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I know we've got a lot of folks on the call, but it's always worth kind of keeping, helping folks, I think, to remember who's who on such a big group. All right, so a couple small updates. I know one of the points we've discussed in the past is sort of the need for youth and teen facilities in the area, and looking at this site as an opportunity. That's something we're still kind of working to pin down and flesh out a little bit. So we've had some contacts and some good initial discussions with the Boys and Girls Club to try to see, like, is there an opportunity for an after school or maybe a summer thing? That's something we haven't gotten a lot of detail yet about, but we're still working to try to nail that down.
Nope. Greg, did we lose you?
Hey, Greg, can I add something in real quick? Along that line, is he frozen?
I think he was frozen. Greg, we can't
Maybe
hear
after
you.
this process is done.
Greg, we lost you pretty early in that.
Cutting in and out.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Uh-huh. No, we can.
So just to say, like, it's okay, it's something we're working to flesh out kind of what a youth and teen component could be here. I think in the schematics you'll see later on, it's kind of generally labeled community or flex space. That could be either the nonprofit uses, it could be kind of youth and teen programming, it could be some mix. So it's a little bit generic. We're kind of creating and carving and preserving space for that. And then we're also on the Metro side kind of checking in at some of the surrounding uses, including the park, the library, and the school, just to get a sense of how much parking utilization there is at those different spots as we think about parking needs on the site here. Before we get into sort of the major project updates, kind of the level of service analysis and the development options, any other updates we should share? Anything going on in the community we should be aware of?
Yes. So when you were talking a minute ago, you talked about the community hub space, but you may have mentioned it and we didn't hear it. You cut off as we already shared, but that other part of the building, I don't know if you represented what your intent was with that. So I would personally like some clarity about that. And then also, I have subsequently had a meeting with Lionel Matthews, our juvenile court judge, clerk, and also with Judge Calloway. And they've put me in touch with Marcel Hernandez, who they have worked with quite a bit in this area of teen engagement. And I am waiting for an opportunity to sit down with both Lionel and Marcel to have that fleshed out a little bit more and then get that information over to you guys.
Okay, that'd be great. We don't have like a really detailed out like the exact uses for different spaces. What we're primarily doing is calling them out as community uses or flex space. It varies, I think, option to option, just to recognize that as we get a better sense of kind of what space is needed for these different things, this is the kind of square footage that we have to work with.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, Aaron, do y'all want to walk through kind of the first analysis?
Sounds good. Fowler, can you pull up the deck? Are you the deck puller? Beautiful. So as Greg mentioned, we're going to do a quick run through of the three basic uses that we're exploring on the site. We did a very preliminary level of service analysis for each of these three pieces, which you'll see in the following slides. So first, from a community use standpoint, obviously, as Greg was pointing out, I think the kind of particulars of what that community use could be are not fully formed yet, but there's just some examples off to the left side here of what that might look like. And as you can see from the map on the right, when you map it against 5 and 15-minute drive times, while there is the neighboring community use nearby, it's not nearly at a density we see in other parts of the city. Next slide, please. And here you can just see what the kind of additional placement of a community hub here would do to that map, really doubling the capacity potentially. Then I don't know if you all knew this or not, but you were in a pickleball desert. So we mapped the pickleball neighboring pickleball sites in Nashville Metro, and definitely don't seem to be, at least according to the data, any in the near future, in nearby area. Next slide. just an idea of what that would do, obviously, to the map. Next. And then we looked very preliminarily just at some key indicators for residential development. So we looked at the area of household income in the neighboring communities. So this is really a point of reference that we're kind of split between areas of high income and relatively lower income. Next slide. This looks at that same dynamic with a little bit more detail, looking at house affordability in the area, and that looking at the ratio of housing cost to income. Next slide. And then I think crucially was really interesting to find that almost half of the townhome market in the metro area has been absorbed within the Bellevue area. As you can see in the graph at the bottom, so the black line is the total number of townhomes sold in the past 5 years, and Bellevue represents a very strong portion of that total outlay of housing product coming on the market. And then also on the upper graph, you can see that the median sale price for those townhomes is also greater than the Nashville average. So just some interesting data points to point out as we look at those three pieces. If you can do one more slide. And then also, and we'll obviously share this with you all as well, just to give you an idea of kind of what, when we say the word townhome, what we're kind of meaning in that, with some recently provided products that have come on the market. Okay, so with that, we'll move into the options and share with you what those three uses look like distributed on the site in a couple different varieties. And with that, I'm going to pitch it over to Brian to give the feedback there.
Thanks, Aaron. So we'll have three options that we'll run through, and a lot of these, they'll range from keeping the existing to a little bit more range of residential and community uses. So I think we're all familiar with the site, but the adjacent parks above here, we've got the Red Caboose, we've got adjacent neighborhood, which I believe we have community representation, and then obviously the school, Bellevue, and local Church of Christ up here. As we talked about, all the parking availability that Greg and team are looking at, analyzing some of the density and some of the opportunities to park in adjacent parking lots and reduce the overall parking need on the site. But the idea behind option one is really to keep the existing buildings, regrade, and give a better opportunity for the site to address a little bit of the concerns of the topographical nature of the site. So letting the building adjust and address to the street edge, creating a new parking area, more green space out front, and then pickleball areas in the back. One of the, I'd say, hallmarks of this site is does keep the existing facility as community hub, but it does present some potential hiccups of just getting access to the back of the site. A lot of the other options, we really create more of a throughput and visible sight lines so that we're not creating any kind of entrapment zones or danger zones for community. As we've heard in the past, there is a large thoroughfare along the back edge, so we're trying to be mindful of those things as we move through these options. This presents the lowest density and the lowest change to the area, but still creating a great community hub.
Hey, Brian, before you go on, just if you could go back to the overhead site. So just to reinforce what Brian was saying, kind of here and the other site that we're looking at right now on Brick Church Pike, we've heard concerns about kind of unwanted activity, in particular crime. And so one of the lens that we're reviewing these potential layouts through is what's called crime prevention through environmental design. It's abbreviated CPTED. We have someone on staff in our community plans team who has spent a fair amount of time in CPTED. He's a former law enforcement officer in sort of his first career. And so we've been taking a look at kind of our different alternatives at both sites through that lens. And as Brian said, one of the concerns here is sort of the activity on the buildings is kind of oriented towards College Jean, but you've got kind of the portion of the park that then comes around behind it. and creates, I think, some visibility, some monitoring concerns. One of the ideas behind Septet is you don't want any dead space that's away from folks. You want to have kind of whatever active uses you have, being able to have eyes out on the area. Normally that's called eyes on the street. In this case, it's probably more like eyes on the park. But that's one of the things we're thinking about as we look at these different options. So, all right. Sorry, Brian, you can keep going.
Oh yeah, all good. It's always good to get a refresher on Septet principles and thoughts behind it because they inform our design here. I think you all understand what's already out there, but just regrading the site, getting some better visibility so that there's not a large hill that you're going up, having a better address with the community hub space. Currently, this is all below grade, so we'd find a way to actually make that more addressed and probably upgrade the facade in order to get that more of a holistic look. But I think there's some really great bones there. Overall site plan. And then just some good metrics of seeing that it's about a 16,000 square foot space. It's over 2 levels, so it is things to note that we have a level up here, and then we have a level below grade, below that upper level, that would then be part of the community hub. So a little more interconnected first floor, not so much on the second floor. The second option is looking at what we call townhomes and community center, community area, community hub. Again, we've talked about it having a variety of possible program values to it, but really thinking about the scale of the site, thinking about the scale of the adjacent homes, the fire station in the north, and everything else around it, trying to create a place that is continuation of what you typically see in a neighborhood, but with more of the idea in the lens of townhomes. So these would be 2-story townhomes in a grouping of 4 or 5, 3. There's all sorts of organizations of these things. But really getting more of a boulevard street, a more residential oriented street. They would be able to pull through, park in, and then community users of the pickleball courts would actually be able to park in the back. Being able to have those eyes on the street, eyes on the program, really allows us to be a flourishing kind of area where we've got active uses, but we always have eyes on the use. The regrade of the site also gives us an opportunity for the existing fire station to also be an assist in the eyes on the program, just being more, I'd say, more open and more exposed to those public uses really helps reduce the crime overall. Again, the adjacent scales, community hub, residential. We have just done a pitched roof because every kid draws a pitched roof. A house in this order, the design of these things would be maybe something similar or different depending on type of use and how large or how many levels these townhomes would want to be. But you've got your residential sidewalks and parking areas on both sides, on one side, so the residents park on one edge next to the community hub. So those parking spaces would be flexed as people leave. The community hub is open during the day. You have the opportunity to park more of a shared parking analysis here. Overall. And as you can see, we're projecting about 48 homes, 48 residences in here as an opportunity for the townhome community use or townhome uses, and then also the 4,500 square feet for the community. That's down from the 16,000 from the previous version. So moving into what we a little bit more densified, but apartment style building where we actually have a large use all the way across. We're double lining the parking, a little bit of what you more see in the adjacent fire hall use, but it's still having the pickleball courts and having a lot more eyes on these edges, a lot more active spaces and still spaces to park for the pickleball courts. Moving in, we have a larger community center, community hub area that allows us to serve a larger public portion, but we've also got the residential lobby on the street here. So a lot more active people coming out to the edge, using the sidewalks and so on. Residential above is a typical, a little bit more what you're used to seeing, a 4/1, where we have residential lobby, community hub, and residential stacked over top. Apartment style, again, typical for a lot of the stick podium with concrete below. It is worth noting that this is all surface parked, so it gives us the opportunity to not have to go below grade in this area, but keep everything at a good price point and not have to incur the overall cost of going below grade. Scale elements, but again, we're trying to work off of the existing fire station, which did do a great job of flattening the site and removing some of the topographical elements. So just coming back and matching up, adding a lot more sidewalks. A lot of the times you're seeing more green space, more open space for that programmable, flexible programmable space. So more community-based, go out there, place a cornhole, go out there, pitch and catch, just more park space to extend off the red caboose space and allow people to really meander in and through, using more of the public areas of the pickleball courts. And then, as you can see here, 72 units, what we're projecting for overall apartment in this area, along with the community hub, back up at that 16,000 square feet. And that's it.
So as we shift into taking feedback and comments, a couple of things that I wanted to flag for folks. Again, we're kind of exploring to see what's workable on the site, what feels like too much. I know this one we've talked with the team is maybe a little bit much, both in terms of the height of the building as well as how much of the site winds up kind of shifted over to parking. But we kind of do want to understand, what our constraints are, get a sense, sit with it a little bit. The other thing we're kind of interested in as we look at these, again, we want to see what we can do for, sort of core government needs, countywide needs, such as kind of the need for either affordable rental units or affordable home ownership options, as well as neighborhood quality of life, and what we can do with all of those to present to the administration, present to the full Metro Council, something that makes a compelling investment opportunity. We've got a lot of capital needs throughout Metro, so what is it that will make kind of this site stand out for the level of investment? And so as part of that, one of the things, especially with the housing piece, is understanding, are there opportunities for public-private partnership for constructing and operating the housing or constructing and selling the housing, as well as the community features. And so the more that kind of we can sweep the community benefit pieces, the neighborhood quality of life, the park improvements, that kind of thing, into a fuller public-private partnership, we think that could offer the benefit of kind of lowering the cost of Metro to make it, kind of more compelling for a future capital spending plan. So with that in mind, we're interested in your feedback, design, layout, the uses themselves, concerns, opportunities, things that seem interesting, that kind of thing.
I'm curious if, I don't know if this is possible, but could we combine the parking with the fire station's parking? Is that something you think they'd be amenable to, or that's even possible? Because then we can reduce a little bit of asphalt and kind of gain a little extra square footage for better uses. I don't know if that's something that they're open to, or that we could do that.
We can check. I'd be real surprised if they were open to it, but we can check with them.
I was gonna say previously on those, they've wanted a secured parking area or some sort of fence between them, just so that they have their dedicated uses.
The
If I
fire station.
remember correctly, when Red Caboose was being repurposed, reactivated, about the same time as we were moving the caboose down, and I said something about that. And that's exactly what they told me, is that from a safety perspective and the rapid movement of their equipment in and out, that it was probably not an advisable way to go.
I was just going to say that I'm doing a survey of all the parking there adjacent and across the street, especially the Metro M properties, and the fire station was included, but I haven't made a note there as far as that comment, but we're still working on that and want to get a Sunday count. So thanks.
Renee, Marianne, Glenn, thoughts?
from a backdoor neighborhood, and I mean, my unit is directly in the back door of this project. As far as having all that space in the back for pickleball, we would be really, really concerned about a crime factor. Just this past week, we've had prowlers in the neighborhood on our patios, moving things around. We put in a police hub report and have had no response from that whatsoever. It wasn't any damage done, but it's very scary for us to have something like that going on. That's not the first time that's happened. And with the recent activity in Red Caboose Park and Bellevue in general, having that open space with buildings in front of it very hidden would be a major concern for us. A fence is not going to protect us from what would go on back there. Previously we've all expressed concerns about having housing on this project, and all three options offer extensive housing, even if I'm looking right, high-rise housing. I just don't think the site is appropriate for that. The community members the community members have all expressed things for activities, exercise, things that would blend in with Red Caboose Park. Neither of these three options that I can tell blend in with Red Caboose Park at all. You've got a football field on the other side. You've got a middle school across the street, and you're putting high-rise housing in. Doesn't make any sense to me.
So first off, thanks for kind of talking through that. There's a couple of things I want to follow up on, but I think the point about sort of the access that folks have back there, kind of the prowlers, that's something that's very much top of mind for us as we think about the layout, because it's both kind of an opportunity to extend Red Caboose, but I think because of the way, like we've talked about a little bit, that it's screened from College does kind of invite that. And so what are the practical things we can do to minimize that is something we do want to sort of think about and treat pretty carefully. One thing I want to clarify is the first option, sort of reusing the building, doesn't include housing. So that is just kind of reshaping, reusing the current structure, reshaping the parking in the front, and then activating the space in the back. Any of this, any of the space in the back that's activated, like they're kind of showing sidewalks, trees, and pickleball courts, but that could also, it would be kind of I think a relatively minor step up to include, like a gazebo, benches, exercise stations. I think those kind of very detailed programming, I think is pretty compatible. AC, if I'm out of line there, let me know, but those feel like, that's always been my expectation is, if one of these moves forward, there'd be a period to sort of figure out the detailed planning that's separate from kind of blocking out the big pieces.
Yeah, and I definitely think something like benches and things like that, picnic tables, is very attainable. If you get into shade structures and pavilions, that's a little bit bigger of a conversation. Of course, I know we talked about splash pad at one point, and that's a little bit less attainable. Outdoor fitness equipment is something that we've been doing a lot of in a lot of parks lately, so that's definitely an option. And it all comes down to funding and planning what the community asks for. But yeah, we can definitely work more on what those park elements look like in more detail once we kind of have the space mapped out.
I do have a clarifying. Sorry, Sherry.
Just real quick. You go ahead.
I have a clarifying question about just defining community hub. Have we defined what's going to be inside of that if it turns into a community hub yet, or is that still kind of up for conversation if we go that route?
I think so. We've tried to retain space for community uses in all three, and it's still pretty open. Like that could be, I think, the original idea for the site, which was primarily nonprofit space.
Right.
It could be something that is more kind of teen oriented. It could be a mix of the two. It could be kind of the resiliency hub that's maybe a little bit more educational. But we're looking to sort of carve out space for all of those and see kind of what are the space needs for each one of those, whether that's through further conversation with Boys and Girls Club, with Judge Calloway and Leno Matthews, or whoever, like trying to get a sense of how you would program that.
Sure. And just another point is like, no matter what we do in this space, there will be more people around. There will be more people moving in and out and across this space. And the one reason I'm sure that there are prowlers and folks back there is because there's nobody back there right now. There's no lighting, there's no people. So I think that having more people drawn to this space will reduce that sort of behavior because there are more people to see them doing that. So whether it's housing or not housing, that's, we don't have to get there right now. But I think partly to reassure some of the neighbors that more traffic is good in order to reduce some crime.
Thanks, Seth. I think that's true. One caveat I do want to give is sightlines are pretty important for this. So,
yeah, for sure.
Like the extent to which kind of the buildings come back. I mean, the pickleball courts, as like in this scenario, as an attractor of people like come in there, and in my experience, you've got lines of people waiting for the pickleball courts. That would certainly be kind of activating that back area, would have eyes back there, that sort of thing. So, but it's really key that sort of sight lines and visibility part of it.
Let me ask
would these
a question,
pickleball courts, one more question. Would the pickleball courts have lights?
I think that's something we would kind of work out with Parks. I don't know. We haven't looked at lighting yet. My hunch is there might be a reluctance on the part of Marianne and her neighbors to have them be lighted, but I think on our part we could go either way.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some of my neighbors comment on the fire station now that it looks like a spaceship lit up at night, so minimal lighting would probably be more acceptable during the nighttime hours, some, but not, as bright as the fire hall is.
Can I jump in here a second? One of the things that stood out to me was the big question, can we move the pickleball courts to the front instead of in the back? Number one, from a noise perspective. Number two, from a lighting perspective. And number three, frankly, from a security perspective. Marianne, let's get together about your prowler, because I think I probably know who it is. And Metro Police are on top of it. I will just share with you right out the gate. And it's not anybody that you guys need to be afraid of. And so anyway, having said that, bad things happen when it's dark. We've seen the effects of that in Bellevue. We have seen essentially the effects of that all over the county. And so for us to put pickleball courts in the back, adjacent to the neighborhood, and pickleball can be noisy, and then needing to require lighting there at night from a safety perspective, and not wanting to do it, and I get it. I think for all those reasons, I would say about moving that to the front, maybe parking to the back. And that way, when you drive by this property, you're not looking at a sea of asphalt. The other thing that I would be really careful about is, and I've shared this before, and I'm just going to sound like the broken record that I am, absolutely under no circumstances will anyone in Bellevue agree to apartments. Hard stop. Hard stop. At any level. I just kiboshed some last Wednesday. And they were at the highest end. And we're looking at that from a traffic perspective. We're looking at that from an increase in crime perspective. We know we need density, but we need the right density. I'm working on another project right now to bring in more, you're going to love this, Greg, townhomes for sale at graduated price levels. And it will offer us the density that we need. Sadly, the heart of Bellevue, the topography that's available doesn't lend itself to the ease of bringing in a lot more housing to this area. One of the biggest outcries we've heard from the neighborhoods, from the overall community, is the need to activate our teens because, as Seth has witnessed, we have so many kids that are just at loose ends, and that's when kids get in trouble. And we've got really important groups that live in this space that have said, if there's anything that you do at this property, it's find a way to activate the kids through art. We've got Arts Bellevue that needs to have a home here. They do great work and they have the opportunity to do great work for the community with the appropriate space. So at this point, I'll shut up, but that's where my head is right now. Glenn?
Well, if I can, Sherry, I'll add on to that and just piggyback and say I would love to engage families more than just teens. The more that we can help to strengthen families and maybe even strengthen parents and kind of give them skills and tools to support their teens, I think that could that's also extremely needed. So I don't want to. I mean, finding things for our youth to do is awesome. I obviously support that 100%. I also think of something that would support families and their development also could be very, very helpful.
100% yes.
So do you
I
have a
agree.
sense
And
of,
our neighbors, all of our neighbors agree with that as well. We'd love to see something along that line. Because there's many people in our community who are very experienced, they're grandparents, and they would love to involve with programs like that as well.
so do y'all have a sense of, I mean, there's a couple threads that we're following up on related to, that we or the council member are following up on related to sort of the teen programming, either after school or out of school, whatever that may be. Do y'all have a sense of what like a family-oriented set of uses would be?
I quite honestly, Greg, think that could be a multitude of things. I mean, the arts can certainly be a part of that, but what Seth is saying is absolutely true. And I've worked with Metro schools for 15 years, so there are other civic organizations, other nonprofits across the city that we could partner with that could help deliver those types of services to families and to teens. We also have, we do have also the Bellevue Community Center here that is another space that needs to be utilized, I think, more for teens as well. Not saying that this can't be or shouldn't be in any way at all. I'm just saying that we also have a space that I think is somewhat underutilized for those same things that are closer to the high school. This is really right across the street from the middle school, so you're looking at some different populations. I think you just have to get creative. We have to talk to some of our community partners to see what options would be available to us. I think Glenell and Judge Callaway would certainly help us in those conversations and think through that a little bit more, as Sherry has also alluded to. My concern also is around, it looks to me that if we go with option 2, option 3, which is with the housing on the property, that we reduce the footprint of the community hub dramatically, which means reduced services that would be available to the community. The whole idea behind all this to begin with was to be a civic center for the community, that we take existing property that's sitting there vacant and utilize it to its full potential to serve the community. This, to me, option 2 and 3 doesn't meet those standards. And as Sherry has also said, there are other housing projects that are coming into Bellevue. Builders are scrambling constantly. I'm seeing hillsides blown off daily for more housing to come into Bellevue. So I don't know that this property is right for that. I do think that it's a property that could really serve the community in a much better capacity, being with especially its location, and that it's sitting there and it's not being utilized in any way. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Len. I appreciate it. I mean, I think I think that the reason we keep trying to hone in on what the different uses are, whether it's the teen space, the family space, some of the other things that have been we've talked about in the past, is from a programming the site perspective, trying to figure out like how much space we should be planning for. Are there particular characteristics we need to have in mind? And so, we've got these kind of two projects going parallel, but the other side that we're looking at, there's like a kitchen function that has, kind of one set of things we need to think about. And so I'm trying to sort of hone in just to see, like, is it the case that we need 16,000 square feet? Is it the case that, 6,000 kind of provides what the kind of uses that we're looking at need, or that it needs to be kind of a higher or a lower number? And so that's like, from a practical perspective, it's figuring out kind of what the space size and characteristics need to be. Can you talk, I know, I think, things that we've heard so far around the housing, one is concern about crime, concern about rentals, and particularly, and I always get the wrong second word here, Forest View. We've got them both in the county, and I apologize. I know that's come up as an example of a concern. We've heard the concern from Mary Ann about kind of the neighbors on the back of the lot and sort of access through there, kind of concerns about sort of their backyards. What are the other things that, when you see this site, kind of triggers for you that this isn't that housing isn't a good fit here?
Because there's a fire station right there. There is a school right there. You have a ball field right there. It's a narrow 2-lane street that cannot be widened. And this is, and you've got the park right there. And for all those reasons, this street is an inappropriate fit for housing.
So just to try to hone in on that a little bit, like, those are all conditions that housing fits into in lots of other parts of the county, next to fire stations, next to schools, next to elementary schools, next to pre-Ks and daycares. And so I kind of want to get a sense, I think what we're being asked to do kind of from the housing team side of things is, sort of the default assumption is that a metro property, by and large, should be appropriate for housing, unless there are reasons that sort of push it outside of that. And so some, like, just to go really extreme, would be like industrial land, land in the floodplain. Like, those are real bright lines, I think, where you wouldn't want to put housing. So I'm trying to sort of walk through and think through kind of what are the conditions of the site that really make it inappropriate. Councilmember, you've mentioned before the fact that it's the only housing on this stretch of the road, given those other uses, the park, the church, the school, the fields. And I think that stands out a little bit more for sure. But it is the case that we have, situations in the county where houses are next to fire stations and schools and so on. So just, if y'all can help me continue to sort of think through what are the conditions that make it inappropriate.
Greg, and I'm not being argumentative, but I think it's more just specifically about, as Sherry's mentioned, it's the location. You have housing all along the periphery of this property, along the periphery of the fire station, the middle school, the library, the park. There is housing all along the periphery of that. You're dropping housing right into the dead center of it. That's a very different, unique thing. And I don't know if you see that a lot in a lot of other places. You also don't usually see that concentration of those types of utilities, if you will.
Those kind of public facilities.
In such a hub of community activity going on. And then so I'll stop there.
And to be clear, I'm 100% looking for argumentation. Like, because I think that helps us hone like our understanding. So no worries about being argumentative. Mary Ann, I think you were going to chime in. Oh, sorry.
you've got one piece of green space back there that's very nice, and it's not utilized a lot, but people do walk their dogs back there. If they go to the park, they continue on down. Whatever's there just needs to be a continuation of Red Caboose. Our community needs an extenuation of that park. We've got a farmer's market there that has to go down a hillside. A farmer's market could be on a flat back on the back side. We've got a Bellevue Garden across the street. So it's a community hub. And when you put housing right in the middle of that, you take that away. It's a small piece of property. You know, its traffic is horrendous any time of day around this area. You've already got some traffic lights, but still, I mean, if you're trying to get out on 70, you're just out of luck unless you sit there 5 minutes. And sometime when you just go to the park and you want to cross Coles Jean, you just go to the church, say you parked over there, you have to wait just to cross the street to get over. And that's not when school is out. When school is out, you're just, you know, you're going to stand there. So there's lots of reasons that housing is just not appropriate for that at all. It's just a place that needs to be more community oriented, more green space. It's one of the few green spaces in this area. Everything else is turned into concrete. So.
Thank you.
Greg, can I chime in with a scenario? I think this scenario might shed light. Visualize this. It's Monday through Friday, school's in session, and we have school buses coming off of Highway 70 down Coles Jean over to Bellevue Middle. At the same time, you have an emergency and the fire truck needs to get out. At the same time, in the scenario that you've proposed, you have X number of homeowners in cars trying to access either Highway 70 or Ball Road to get out. That is a complete and utter cluster. And I wouldn't want to live there.
Okay. All right. So I think we've talked through sort of the green space, the traffic complications with the school and the fire station, the kind of general feel and sort of crime and sort of nuisance issues in the back. Any other thoughts on sort of the layout of the sites more generally? Other kind of things that we haven't talked about that we should touch on?
I wanted to chime in real quick on behalf of Parks. We had mentioned, someone mentioned moving the pickleball courts to the front, to the street side on Coles Jean. From a Parks perspective, we really do want to keep that in the back so that it does connect more cohesively with the rest of Red Caboose Park. That way, if parents are trying to go between the playground and the pickleball courts or between other amenities that we throw in there, we don't want them to have to walk all the way out onto the street to get to the other part of the park. So we are trying to keep that park piece together. And that's kind of the logic for keeping the pickleball courts in the back there. I also think that, to the point that was made earlier as well, we'll probably want to put some sort of lighting, some sort of security cameras. With the grading that's there, we might even need a retaining wall separating the neighborhood that's back there from this park. So I think we will see an increase in safety, but we do also want to keep that cohesiveness of that park together instead of splitting it up into separate pieces.
That's really good to know, because I was going to ask about a retaining wall versus higher density tree line, and moving the pickleball courts to the front strip and that elongated strip in front of the pickleballs to the back strip. You see what I'm talking about? So you've got the 4 pickleball courts, and then you've got that rectangle, that elongated rectangle, flip them, and then give whatever the barrier is between Ashley Green and that's exactly right. Thank you, Greg, or whoever's doing that.
Brian, I think.
Thanks, Brian.
No problem.
And it may
All
not
right.
look like much, but I think just from a sound perspective, if we can mitigate some of that reverb from the pickleball court, I think it would be helpful.
And my
Gotcha. Yeah, that's
hunch is,
totally doable. I thought you meant moving it to the front along Polish Jean in front of the building. But yeah, no, I think that looks great.
I think fire would appreciate it as well. They're very concerned about kind of clear separation, and I think like a fenced pickleball court would probably enforce that even more strongly. Seth, you wanna
Yeah,
you wanna
so-
round us out?
Yeah, so is there a scenario where the current structure, which the current structure is just demolished, and let's say we go with option one here, it's just a community space, pickleball courts, and we move that structure to the back corner where the pickleball courts currently are in this plan, in such a way that it allows the pickleball courts to actually be closer to Coley's Jean, but there's still a flow from the park around the fire hall to the pickleball courts that doesn't require them to go on the sidewalk. You can actually just walk through the park to do that. Because my thought is, well, if we're willing to knock it down and build apartments, why can't we knock it down and build a new community center?
So I think physically, there's probably a fair amount to recommend that. Some of it gets down to sort of the structure of what Metro can and can't do with bond funding. So we can't enter into a long-term lease for use of property that has geo bond debt attached to it, which is our primary way of building new structures. If we have a property and we lease it to a private entity through a public-private partnership and they build new, there's more flexibility there. And so there's kind of more flexibility to figure out what you do with that community space if it's something that's done through a public-private partnership than if it's Metro alone. So I think, Brian has already sketched out, I think, what you're proposing.
Ish,
He's
yeah,
very quick,
ish.
as y'all can see. So I think we can sort of think about that from sort of a layout and structure perspective. I think that might cause some concerns for Marianne and her neighbors. But as we're sort of thinking through our options and thinking about sort of costs and what the different community uses are, there may be an opportunity that comes up. We can take a look at that or keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you.
What about doing like a mixed use? And I think that we talked about this before, but like a ground floor community space, again, keeping that definition flexible, and then one level of living space above. Is that a compromise that, we are providing some housing, we are providing some opportunity for that, but also maintaining the community hub without it being a residential tower? Is that something that people might be a little bit more comfortable with?
Not presuming to speak to community comfort, I think you've got to have the financing work for the private side to accommodate that, and I don't know that would. I don't know that the townhomes would, honestly, like in all honesty. That's part of what we hope to sort of explore. But community folks, one story above a community hub, does that seem more workable, or is that kind of all the same concerns?
I think it's all the same concerns. I don't really think that would solve the concerns of our neighbors. So.
Okay. All right. Well, we are about at 1 hour. So Kelsey, can you do real fast next steps?
Yes, so thank you everyone for this feedback now, but we are going to send the development options to everyone, especially for those that couldn't attend, so we can, over the next week, gather additional feedback. If you all are looking at it and you're like, I actually think this might warrant a further conversation with the project team, just reach out to me. I can schedule that. And yeah, and then I'll make sure to also, since we recorded this, I'll be able to send out the recording. So for those that couldn't attend can also get the feedback that everyone was providing here. So yeah, next steps are just providing feedback so we can really hone in on the development options and capture concerns or maybe even new ideas for the space. And then we'll give that over to the consultants to address before we meet again. But yeah, at any point, if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out, but we will be in touch with the development options.
Greg, I do have one question, which would be, what do you need from us to help drive this forward a little bit? I want to say faster, but so we don't waste a lot of time in spinning here. What do you need from us?
I think if there are, so I think that the discussion we had today was good, and I appreciate that. Even if it's, you know, we've got different thoughts about what might be appropriate, I do appreciate. And like I said, I think honing in on what is it that makes a site appropriate or inappropriate for housing. I think that's something that will be useful for us, not just for this site, but also as we think about Metro going forward. That's something that I see as of value. So if there's something that occurs to you as you sit with the options a little bit more one way or another, that's useful. I think clarifying and trying to hone in, like, I don't think we're going to get to a point where we know exactly, like, in whatever option, like this community space is going to be 300 square feet for this nonprofit and 600 square feet for this one and 2,000 square feet for this exact program. But starting to, you know, anything we can do to help flesh out, like, what is a teen use? What is a family use? Like fleshing that out a little bit. If you've got thoughts later on, if you've got models, examples, I think that's useful. And then a sense of both kind of how, you know, candidly, I think we've asked you in here to help us bring sort of the community perspective, the Bellevue perspective, the immediate neighbor perspective. I think, you know, sort of taking a little bit of time and thinking about the challenges that the county as a whole is facing and kind of how you weigh that within the discussion that we've had. I think that's an important element too. So it's not to say that we're going to solve our affordable housing problems on this site. Like, we are not. Like we are all very aware of that. But thinking through kind of what is the role of a site like this within both kind of the community needs that y'all have been articulating, but also kind of the broader county and kind of where Bellevue fits into the broader county. That's not specific, like that's stuff we've kind of chewed on throughout this, but that's, I think, the kind of things that we're looking for some insight into. That is probably way too much, actually.
No, not at all. No, that's the kind of information I think we need. I think we need, you know, information and transparency throughout this process, so we know what we're up against, you know, as we move through the process, and what decisions and what conversations are happening behind the scenes, so that we stay informed and not, for lack of better words, caught off guard with, you know, things like housing that really wasn't on the radar for a long time, and then suddenly it's become a big part of the radar. And so I just think that the more that we that we're transparent about what expectations look like, I think the better off we'll be.
Yeah. And just on that point, you know, if you really want to dig into the weeds, you can go back and look at kind of our budget presentation at council a few months ago in the preparation for this year's Metro budget, where our housing director, I think, fielded quite a number of questions about kind of the use of public property for housing. So it's not, you know, I know it feels behind the scenes because you're not like closely following like everything that happens in our housing division, but they get a lot of sort of general public questions about that. That is, and it's, you know, something that came out of this task force report from a couple years ago. It's something council members either during meetings or kind of outside of meetings kind of ask them about a fair bit. And you know, like I've mentioned before, it is something we're looking at across the county here, Brick Church Pike, Inglewood, Antioch, downtown, anywhere that's got a public property component. We're at least taking a look at it.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. I think we're looking forward to, you know, seeing kind of where the next step of this and goes and checking in about a month and a half again. So hope to see you all then.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.